You're looking through this lens because I'm standing in front of you. Hi, I'm John Rennie from Boneyard Pictures, and I'm here today to talk to you about John Carpenter's 1992 film, Memoirs of an Invisible Man. Fiercely independent filmmaker John Carpenter has undoubtedly earned his place among the names of filmmakers who will forever be an inspiration in the world of genre filmmaking. Carpenter has said that it was genre filmmaking that gave him his career after he scored his first mainstream hit Halloween in the horror genre in 1978. Throughout his career, Carpenter has withstood the many ups and downs that come with working in the film business for over 40 years. His 1982 project The Thing was famously the movie that almost derailed his Hollywood trajectory as a director, as it was considered a box office failure. But over time, has gone on to be one of the most respected films in the horror genre. In a 2011 interview, just after his final film to date as director, Carpenter said, "The movie business, dude. I've been doing this for 40 some odd years, and I've been doing it back to back to back. Not only sometimes writing it, but directing it and doing the music. When you give up your private life, you have no life. I just thought I can't do this anymore. It doesn't help the Ghost of Mars tanked, like the Titanic." Since his hiatus from filmmaking began, Carpenter has been working on many other projects. I myself was lucky enough to see him live in London on 2 occasions, promoting his anthology and Lost Themes albums live on stage, which was an absolute blast. For me, being in the same room as Carpenter was well worth the price of admission. So it's not like Carpenter has retired, he's just in a different groove. In his long and varied career, Carpenter seldom gave up creative control. Having his name above the titles of almost all of his films gave Carpenter an auteur status among many fans and critics alike. When it came to the movie I want to talk about now, the 1992 film from Warner Brothers studio, The Memoirs of an Invisible Man, at first glance it seems that Carpenter was only on the project as a director for hire. His name is absent from the main title. The score, which Carpenter often did himself on his lower budget projects, was composed by Shirley Walker, and the film was edited by Christine and Starman collaborator Marion Rothman. So it could be said that this movie doesn't quite have the Carpenter stamp of the anti-authoritarian films he previously did, like Escape from New York or They Live. But I beg to differ. I think if you look closer at this work, it fits very much into Carpenter's cinematic back catalogue, and definitely has some of his trademarks. For one thing, Carpenter has had a long love affair with classic Hollywood. Carpenter reimagined The Thing from Another World, which had a huge impact on him as a young filmgoer, and at one time was set to remake The Creature from the Black Lagoon at Universal. This project was shelved, but he did go on to remake The Village of the Damned in 1995. All of these classic reimaginings were made in collaboration with major studios, so you could see there is a section of Carpenter's career that could be dubbed the studio remakes and classic sci-fi influenced films of John Carpenter. Memoirs would fit squarely into that category. This would total a trilogy of films that were all based on intellectual properties that were owned by the studios. Although Memoirs isn't a universal film as The Invisible Man from '33 was, I think you can still say, as Carpenter himself puts it, it's an Invisible Man picture, giving the film its place in the canon of science fiction films that were made in that vein. And I think if anyone were to write about the subgenre of Invisible Man studio films, Memoirs would definitely be in the company of its 1930s and future counterparts. This is a constant throughout Carpenter's work. The Fog from 1980 shows its influences on its sleeve from the Trollenberg Terror, as does Prince of Darkness and its influence from John Cocteau. You could even go as far as to say that They Live, Carpenter's tale of urban decay, is a riff on Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where the aliens represent the repressive upper classes. Early in Memoirs' production, Ivan Reitman and director Richard Donner were offered the chance to direct before Carpenter, but they left the project due to creative differences with Chevy Chase, who had put a lot of his time and his own money into the film.
Kaplan called again from New York about magnascopics. You've got the OPEC thing. Staff meetings Thursday.
Chase believed that this movie was his chance to showcase his abilities as a leading man, capable of playing romantic roles.
I hate TV.
Me too. I like music.
I love jazz.
But ultimately, audience wanted him for his unique brand of comedy rather than his leading man prowess. A lot of the now well-publicized power struggles on set between Carpenter and Chase are a result of these facts. In the end, they both blame creative differences for the film's eventual failure at the box office, making only $14.5 million on its $40 million budget. But I personally believe that Carpenter's history and understanding of classic Hollywood films made him the perfect director for the job. And I believe that if he had been able to make the movie he wanted to make, Memoirs would have been a much darker film within the line of Carpenter's previous filmography. But in the end, all we can do is speculate what might have been. Personally, I really like the fun thriller that we have. I argue, because of these facts, that Memoirs is an important film in the career of John Carpenter, and definitely has its place in the filmmaker's canon of work that showcases the director's trademarks. Undoubtedly, to me, the film's biggest influences, apart from the Invisible Man series, is the work of Alfred Hitchcock, and the genre he popularized of the innocent man or innocent couple on the run from shadowy organizations. Specifically the 39 Steps, Saboteur, and the big one being North by Northwest. This influence was cemented for me when in the opening of Memoirs, Nick Holloway, the film's protagonist played by Chevy Chase, is covering for his workmate we never see named Kaplan when he's in the industrial accident that causes his invisibility.
Apartment at 7:30. You promised Kaplan you'd cover for him.
Oh, Jesus, this is thick, Kathy. How am I supposed to get through all this? You go.
You gave him your word.
I was drunk.
Of course, George Kaplan being the name of the invisible agent that Cary Grant's character Roger Thornhill is mistaken for in the opening of Hitchcock's film North by Northwest.
George Kaplan.
Boy. This cannot be a mistake on Carpenter's part, as it's so much fun to hear. And we know from other names used by Carpenter in the past, such as crediting himself as John T. Chance for his editing duties on his earlier work, Assault on Precinct 13, that he often encodes little gags like this into his films. John T. Chance being the name of John Wayne's character in Rio Bravo, the film that Carpenter has said on many occasions is the biggest influence on Precinct 13 and his other Siege-style works. For these reasons alone, I think Memoirs has always deserved more credit. It can be said that similar to They Live from 1988, which has an obvious distaste for the yuppie culture of the 1980s and Reaganomics, that Memoirs is a work made in the same vein. The character of Holloway has problems with his identity right from the start.
What about my commitments? My family, my relatives?
You don't have any.
One of the main themes of the film is that Holloway was invisible before he was physically invisible.
Matter of fact, when you think about it, the man has the perfect profile. He was invisible before he was invisible.
I think this makes Holloway a more interesting character, as his invisibility causes him to have a crisis of conscience, and he decides that being emotionless and caring only about money is pointless if he is just another invisible broker, living life financially and emotionally in the margins and shadows of existence.
You know, I never realized how important it is to be seen, acknowledged. You start questioning whether you exist at all.
It takes Holloway to lose himself completely to find himself again.
Don't. It's beautiful.
In Conrich and Wood's collection of essays on the work of John Carpenter, The Technique of Terror, a parallel is drawn between Nick Holloway and the villain of the film, David Jenkins, a rogue CIA agent played with an excellent dark humor by actor Sam Neill.
You know, I think we can work this thing out together, Nick, you and I. Forgive and forget.
Who will stop at nothing to get his hands on the Invisible Man for reasons of surveillance and dark espionage. This is another link to the films of Alfred Hitchcock and the fractured departments of government and the military, like that of the Shadow Organization in the 39 Steps.
Now, assassination, anything at all, is entirely ethical if you're on the right side.
Jenkins is an evil version of Holloway, and this is vocalized to the point where Jenkins actually tells Holloway, "We aren't that different, you and I."
Oh, God, don't you see we're in this together, Nick, you and I? We're not so terribly different, we're iconoclasts. Oh.
They are both faceless killers, one for the dark side of politics, and the other an economic hitman who hides in the shadows of finance. Once Jenkins draws this parallel, Holloway decides enough is enough, and he must leave his pointless existence behind. But in classic Carpenter fashion, like that of the apocalyptic ending of The Thing where the whole world hangs in balance, Holloway's only way of existence is to carry on being a faceless tycoon, making deals and playing the stock market over the phone.
I'm here. Sort of.
It's a pretty dark ending when you think about it for Nick. He has no choice but to continue living in the margins of financial society.
Now you listen to me, you son of a bitch. I've lost everything but my soul, and you're not gonna take that away from me. Whatever I become, it's gonna be my choice, not yours. Is that clear?
The only positive is that he now has Alice Munro, played by, I think, an unformed Daryl Hannah by his side,
To Elvis.
who helped him evade capture and is now pregnant with his child. But I can't help but ask the question, what will become of them after the film finishes? Will their child be invisible? Apparently an original ending rejected by the studio actually has Alice giving birth to the invisible child. In the book, John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness, Bullinger states, Warner Brothers was worried the audience would react to the invisible baby as if it were a freak. I've always thought this ending would have been a much more bleaker ending, and more in the true vein of Carpenter's work, but we will never know. I can't say that Memoirs is an overlooked masterpiece, because it is true, over the years it has gained its admirers like myself, but mostly the film is still considered clunky and full of cliches. The film's production history of on-set adversity between director and star is more talked about than the actual film itself. But speaking for myself, I consider Memoirs of an Invisible Man to be a great fun Invisible Man picture.
I had to put the old Nick Holloway behind me. I create a new identity. Go underground. Morning.
Morning.
And if you want to look a little deeper into it, I think there are certainly echoes of Carpenter's personal politics and lifestyle views in the film. Most importantly for me, it shows once again that Carpenter can turn his hand to any work. He's a master of cinema, and I think his knowledge of genre films and the history and admiration of the films of classic Hollywood did indeed make him the right man for the job. It may not be a perfect picture, and it sure has its bumps, but once you unwrap those uncomfortable ace bandages, I think there's definitely something worth looking at. I really hope you enjoyed this video, so if you'd like to see more films like this on the works of John Carpenter and others, please remember to like and subscribe. And as always, thanks for listening.